welcome to the February edition of HR Hot Topics. I'm your host, Jody Schaefer, and this month, folks, we are talking data, specifically workforce data. And I know I've touched on this in prior episodes, and we were really looking at the current labor shortages we're feeling, partly as a result of COVID. And I want to give you an update on that. But I also want to step back and take a much longer view on workforce and what we as Michigan employers can expect in the coming years, and not the distant future, but like in the next 5, 7, 10 years, what our reality is going to be. So currently in Michigan, we have 190,000 fewer people in our workforce as we did when we compare it to pre-COVID numbers. So February of 2020 as compared to now, 190,000 fewer people in our workforce. And you're feeling that, right? So when you look at who's sitting in that 190,000 person bucket, it's predominantly women, millennials, and minorities. And part of that is because of the industries that were most hardly impacted by COVID. Some of the shutdowns, or they took the slowest amount of time to recover, and those industries employed those three groups of people in higher percentages. But another reason, and specifically women, another reason we're not seeing nearly as many women in the workforce as we did in February of 2020 is because of childcare. And you know this, right? If you have employees, you know that if they have children, COVID has just wreaked havoc on any sort of predictable schedule. You either can't find daycare because there aren't as many daycare options as there were before the pandemic. People have left that industry altogether. Or if you have your kid in daycare and somebody gets exposed, all of a sudden daycare shut down unexpectedly and somebody's got to stay home with that child. And the same things are happening in schools too. So you have a lot of women that left the workforce and are not back in it again, fully participating, because these requirements and these constraints are still pulling at us. So that's what's happening right now. Another staggering statistic that I'd like to share with you is the labor participation rate, or the workforce participation rate. And this is something that's tracked, and it's tracked at the state level, it's tracked nationally too, but it's a number that reflects, of all of the folks eligible to be in the workforce, how many of them are actually working or looking for work. And you want that number to be as close to 100% as possible, because then that means that you have a robust labor pool to pull from. In Michigan, our current labor force participation rate, 59.5%. Just let that number sink in. 59.5% of Michiganders who are eligible to be in the workforce, meaning they're of the appropriate age and they're not institutionalized in any way, right? Less than 60% of them are actually in the workforce. We rank 41st in the nation for that percentage, okay? And that's lower, obviously, than the national average, but it's lower than previous Michigan rates too. So this number just keeps dropping. And that's why we feel it right now. It's so tight. It's so hard to find folks, right? But as I said at the start of this episode, I want to step back and take a longer view on this. One of the largest segments of our workforce currently are baby boomers. Right? It's a huge generation. 60 million plus people are in the boomer generation. And in Michigan, they make up about 22% of our workforce currently. That's a pretty significant percentage. And many of those boomers are set to retire in the next 5, 7 years, right? Maybe as long as 10 if you're lucky. Now, some of them retired early because of COVID. So we're already starting to feel this impact a little bit. But 20%, right? 22% of Michigan's workforce made up of that generation looking to retire in the next 5 to 10 years. They're going to leave 1 million vacancies in our state. 1 million. Now, whether a job held by a boomer today is still a job that's open in 10 years, right? Who knows what happens with automation and technology, but still 1 million jobs. We only have 10 million people in our state, folks. This is huge. So where are we going to find the talent to replace the individuals that are going to be leaving the workforce? Well, this is where the news doesn't really get any better. The birth rates in the U.S. have dropped for the 6th year in a row. Michigan's feeling that, right? So we don't have as many people being born to replace this large generation. In Michigan, the number of folks that are immigrating into our state, dropping. And the net growth in our state, the net population growth is dropping, right? When you look at the folks that are leaving Michigan, voluntarily leaving Michigan, maybe they were born here, raised here, but have now decided to take a job outside of the state. Of those leaving, the median age is 30 years old, and 45% of them have a college degree. So we're exporting our own talent, and we don't have enough numbers just through other means to replace what we have. And then again, right, you layer on top of it the number of vacancies that we're expecting to see down the road. Guys, this is a huge problem, and it's not specific to COVID, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. So we need to start thinking about not only how do we make jobs attractive right now, right, because it's fiercely competitive out there, but we need to start thinking about down the road, how are we going to find talent to fill some of our positions? And I want to just share a few ideas here. In the short term, I think we have to evaluate the current openings that we have, right? And we have to determine whether or not what we're offering aligns with what the current job seeker wants. Now I'm going to read you the statistic. This made me laugh out loud. The number of prime age men, this is in the US, this is a national statistic. The number of prime age men willingly opting for a part-time job jumped from 6 million in 2007 to nearly 8 million in 2019. And this was before the pandemic, okay? So the pandemic sort of exacerbated this. This was particularly relevant or prevalent among men aged 21 to 30 who were voluntarily working 200 fewer hours per year, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research. And that decrease in hours worked for men in this category exactly mirrored the increase in video game hours played. These men voluntarily decreased their time spent working or pursuing professional development in order to increase their leisure hours, 75% of which were spent playing video and computer games. Now that's an extreme example, right? But you have heard over and over that job seekers of today want different things than the boomers that are currently sitting in those roles wanted and expected out of work. And this idea of balance, right? Whether you spend the other portion of your day playing video games, if that's what balance means to you, or whether it's child rearing or just time with family or travel or whatever it is, folks aren't necessarily looking to work the same number of hours or in the same way that they were historically. And so as employers, we can have all sorts of opinions about that, but if that's the labor pool that we're pulling from, we do have to make some adjustments. So a position that used to be full-time held by one person, if it's still full-time hours, you might consider hiring 2 part-timers so that they can job share, because flexibility might be really important to them. You still get the work done, you just get it done differently. Or remote work, or what can we automate, right? We're going to have to be making a lot of decisions. That's now. That will continue to be the case. But I think as you look down the road too, we have to start thinking about reskilling our workforce, right? Expecting that folks are going to come out of some sort of training, certification, or college prep program and just be ready for you to pick. That's not the case. College admission rates are declining too across our state. So that's just not the case. We're going to have to create training programs in our own places of employment, in our own industries, to find individuals that want to work, are capable of learning a new skill, and then we are going to have to be the ones training them. So connections with high school programs, right? Apprenticeships, co-ops, job shadowing, all of these things that we used to do before college entrance rates jumped through the roof, right? And then we just kind of expected college to do that for us. We're going to have to revert back to some of those tried and true strategies, I think, in order to capture the workforce that we need going forward. So that's just kind of what I meant when I said at the start of this video, pick your head up, folks, and take the long view on this. COVID is shining a light right now on labor shortage issues, but regardless of what happens with COVID, I can tell you based on these numbers, this is our reality for the foreseeable future, and we need to start adapting now. So I'm going to link to some of these videos in the message, of course, so you can look into it. I think it's fascinating. It's terrifying, but we can't fix problems if we don't know they're problems. So this is my public service announcement to all of you today. This is coming, and we need to start preparing for it now. So with that, I'll leave you. If you have any questions, you can reach me, Jody Schaefer, at workwithhrm.com. And until then, folks, I'll see you in March.